Nick, thank you very much. Nick Miller there with the weather for us. There is continuing coverage on BBC Two and on the BBC News Channel with Clive Myrie. And here on BBC One, we'll be joining our news teams where you are. I'll be back to later at 10. We'll leave you now with a blend of memorable images from the life of Prince Philip. Goodbye.
Good evening. Tributes have been paid across our islands to His Royal Highness Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, following his death earlier today. The Channel Islands have always had a deep affection for the Queen and her husband, and visits were guaranteed the warmest of welcomes. Alison Moss has been looking back at the royal visits, which still burn bright in the memories of islanders.
By his wife's side, steadfast in his support and welcomed warmly by the crowds, His Royal Highness Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, has accompanied the Queen on their many visits to the Channel Islands. Their first in 1949, before the coronation.
This fragment of the ancient Duchy of Normandy are vividly aware of the ties of fealty which bind us to the reigning monarch. The presence here of his daughter, the heiress presumptive to the throne, with her husband, is an event which we celebrate with universal rejoicing and will long remember.
In 1957, they returned, this time Prince Philip as the Queen's consort, and repeated time after time, in total 8 official occasions. But in the memories of so many are the most recent visits, the walkabouts, the excitement of school children as the royal helicopter arrives, new generations caught up in the fervour of flag-waving royal moments. Most recently, before the Duke of Edinburgh stepped back from public life, the royal couple returned to the islands for a final time to mark the 60th anniversary of liberation, a poignant occasion for those who lived through and remembered the occupation, the Second World War, the loss of life, and the return of the Channel Islands to the Crown. Young people have been at the front of the crowds at all the royal tours of the Channel Islands. Their support of the Queen and Prince Philip has been clear to see. Away from the cameras, the support has been reciprocated by the Duke of Edinburgh Awards scheme, which has impacted on the lives of thousands of young Channel Islanders. A legacy that lives on and won't be forgotten.
Well, as news spread of the Duke's death, flags were lowered to half-mast on government buildings, offices and parish halls in Jersey. They'll remain at half-mast until after the royal funeral. Jersey's bailiff said Prince Philip exemplified duty and service. Here's Richard Hall.
Government House in Jersey, a familiar venue for islanders and royal visitors alike. A suitable spot to remember a man who always made his mark.
The Duke was always a very engaged man, a very inquiring man. He, of course, had given valuable years over many decades of service, but he never lost that interest in wanting to know what and why and what you'd got to do with a particular thing. He was very, very interested in people as well as how things worked.
The Duke flew for 44 years and flew 59 types of aircraft. It was quite an achievement for an Admiral of the Navy.
Well, I think like many people, he was a very, very keen aviator. He, of course, had spent many years flying with what was then the Queen's Flight, now 32, the Royal Squadron in the Royal Air Force, as part of his flying experience. And he very much enjoyed aviation. It was part of his character to want to be with technology, to be up there at the lead of things. So yes, not a bad record, but something that was typical of the man, I believe, who had a very great passion in modernising, in technology and in moving forward.
But of course, his passion was the sea. And many here remember their first sight of the Royal Yacht Britannia before she retired from public duties, carrying the royal couple around the Bailiwicks Islands. He had an affection towards the island. We can tell that from history.
I think that's right. He came with the then Princess Elizabeth in 1949. And he made, in total, 7 visits to the island, one of which he came on his own, dealing primarily with the Duke of Edinburgh's awards. He was an accessible facet of the monarchy.
A great loss.
Yes, I agree.
The legacy he leaves behind should be an example to all of us, not least within the island, things like the Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme, which has benefited and continues to benefit so many islanders.
That really is the link with us and the islands that is so important, and that really makes this even more of a loss to us, doesn't it?
Yes, and if you stand back from it, it's a loss obviously to us as islanders. It'll be a loss to the Queen and to the royal family, to the country, and also the rest of the Commonwealth. Of such an important figure who spans so many decades of the history of the world and of Britain. He will be sorely missed.
Meanwhile, Guernsey's Lieutenant Governor, Sir Ian Corder, who met Prince Philip several times during his service with the Royal Navy, described the Duke as a towering figure renowned for his sense of humour. Sir Ian joined Guernsey's bailiff and Chief Minister to pay tribute on behalf of the bailiwick. Ewan Duncan was there.
Across the bailiwick today, a shared act of remembrance. This was an especially poignant day for those who had met the Duke.
I was fortunate enough to meet him a couple of times during my service career as he visited various establishments that I was working in. He was, a towering character. I always thought he was clearly immensely well informed, certainly about military matters and about sort of global affairs. But he was also massively engaged with people, interested in people, and of course he always had that sort of mischievous glint in his eye, which I think many of us regard incredibly fondly.
How will you remember Prince Philip?
I think my overarching memory will be of somebody who epitomised commitment and devotion to duty, to fulfil that role that he did as Her Majesty's consort for nigh on 70 years. It takes huge devotion to your task and to your adopted country. And I think if above all else, that's the thing that stands out for me about his life.
Guernsey's bailiff and Chief Minister reminded islanders of royal visits stretching back over the decades.
Well, I think each of the visits that Prince Philip and Her Majesty undertook, and there were 6 of them, starting initially with something that we will all use at some stage in our lives, it seems, the Princess Elizabeth Hospital being opened back in 1949, right through to that 60th anniversary of the liberation, that he had an interest in the bailiwick. It was only on that last occasion, as I understand it, that they didn't visit the other islands of the bailiwick as well, so they always made time to take in the other islands. They had an interest in what was going on over here, and we as loyal islanders reciprocated that interest by giving them our unswerving loyalty throughout.
I only met him when he came to Guernsey, and I don't mean I met him, you know, I was in the crowd when he was here. Wasn't ever introduced to him. I just thought he was a great man because he had such character, vitality, energy, intelligence. He was opinionated. You know, even if whether you're a monarchist or not, you've got to admire a man of that standing.
How do you think the islands collectively will remember Prince Philip?
I think with much affection, much admiration, and with a smile, because he was a type of person that left a smile. You know, if he made the odd injudicious comment, because he was a human being, you just made you smile. You thought, you know, he didn't have a bad bone in his body. He was a human being, and I think that's important.
Further tributes continue to pour in, and a 41-gun salute will be held at Castle Cornet tomorrow from noon.
In the most northerly Channel Island, there are fond memories of a royal visit back in 2001. Alderney and its neighbours pulled out all the stops to ensure the couple's short trip to their island was as special as they could make it. One member of that organising committee recalls Prince Philip's keen sense of humour.
Prince Philip, when he arrived and we welcomed him and I had a brief conversation with him, and he asked whether everything had gone well, and I said, I'm just so sorry that you're here for such a short time. And he said, oh, you know, royal visits like fish, you know what they say. And I remember that saying, you go off fish, or fish goes off after if you have it too long. I can't remember what it was, but that was the thing, and he just smiled, and he always has witty remarks, hasn't he? He's just that sort of person.
And in the past hour, Sark Senior has added his voice to the growing number of tributes. Christopher Beaumont said the Duke always took a keen interest in island life and understood Sark's special character. He would be greatly missed.
His obvious delight at being here in Sark is memorable. He was sincerely interested in people and seemed to appreciate and value Sark's uniqueness. We remember his ready humour and the intelligence in his eyes. We have many photographs in the seigneury drawing room which were presented to us by him. They will remind him of his time here. We shall miss him greatly.
News of the Duke's death shortly before his 100th birthday broke just after midday. As it spread across our communities, Islanders reflected on a member of the royal family who never failed to leave an impression.
No, I think it's terribly sad. It's the end of an era, and as I said, I'm a great royalist.
Obviously a big part of the institution of the royal family, so yeah, and a huge loss for the Queen and her family, I'm sure, as well.
Well, quite shocked, yeah, I thought that because he looked as though he was going to make a recovery. It's very sad. Very sad indeed.
Yeah, I'm really shocked. I mean, obviously he's an elderly gentleman, but no, it's still a shame, isn't it, really?
He's much loved, I think.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, and I think a great sense of humour, although not particularly PC sometimes.
I'm ex-military, and I loved his military approach to everything, to life in general, yeah. And I think he was a brilliant consort for the Queen, I have to say. Absolutely superb.
Right, I'm Irish, but he was a good old person.
Yeah, he was quite a character.
Really was, yeah. I think he was the best of the lot. He spoke his mind.
Now let's take a look at the weather forecast with B. Tucker.
We've had some sunshine today across the islands, a bit of a change on the way for the weekend, and we have seen thicker clouds start to push in over the last few hours. This was taken earlier today in Jersey. That thicker cloud is giving a few showers at the moment, and it will bring some more persistent rain through the weekend. So tomorrow I think is the poorest of the 2 days this weekend. A lot of cloud with outbreaks of rain, and even when the rain does ease, it will stay quite damp and drizzly. Both days I think it is going to be colder. We start to see the winds coming round from a northeasterly direction, but we should see more sunshine on Sunday. Here's this weather front then. It's lying right across the islands through tonight and tomorrow, eventually pushing eastwards, but it is slow to clear, particularly the cloud. So it is going to be quite a grey day tomorrow, damp and drizzly with northeasterly winds, which will make it feel quite cold. As we head through Saturday night into Sunday, then it finally clears out of the way and we really do start to establish those northeasterly winds. So it is going to be quite cold. More in the way of sunshine on Sunday, the risk of 1 or 2 isolated showers. Now, as we head through tonight, we've already got that thick cloud starting to push in from the north, and by dawn I think we start to see the rain spreading in as well. So a cloudy end to the night, light winds, quite a bit of low cloud as well, but not quite as cold as last night. Temperatures down at around 5 or 6 degrees. So cloudy and wet for most of the day tomorrow. The rain on and off, a few heavy pulses during the morning, perhaps the odd glimmer of sunshine during the afternoon, and we could see 1 or 2 sharp showers, but the cloud is going to be quite stubborn to clear. So quite grey during the afternoon for some of us. Northeasterly winds pick up as well, and temperatures I think will struggle a bit tomorrow. Highs of just 8 or 9 degrees. Here are your times of high water then. We've got 18:59 at St Peter Port and 18:54 at St Helier for tomorrow. Along our coastlines then, we've got those winds gradually coming around to a northeasterly direction. Force 3 to 5, occasionally 6, quite poor visibility with outbreaks of rain and drizzle throughout the day. So it is turning a bit cooler as we head through the weekend. Both days the risk of some rain. Saturday probably the wettest of the 2 days. It does turn drier as we head into next week. And that's your forecast.
Thanks, Bea. I'll be back with our late news at 10:45 in a moment. We'll join our colleagues at Spotlight with more tributes. Goodbye for now.
One of the many charities the Duke of Edinburgh was involved with was Surf Lifesaving, an integral part of coastal life here in the southwest. And the clubs say he was always ready to get involved. Well, Gemma Woodman is in Polzeath for us this evening. Gemma.
Well, the Duke of Edinburgh had a special affinity with the ocean. He lent his support to many clubs and societies along the Cornish coastline. And nearly 21 years ago, he came here to Polzeath to open